Excited to hear from you. Before you speak, do you want some readers?
Yeah, just the reading. Yeah.
So we don't have a reader, and it's a fairly long passage today from Isaiah 58. Are there one or two people who'd be willing to help read it for us? We can pass you the mic if you're willing. Any readers in the group? Sure, Tony, that'd be great. I'll grab this one. Do you want to share it between you and me? You want to do the first half?
Okay, Isaiah 58. Shout loudly, don't hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. Announce to my people their crime, to the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day, desiring knowledge of my ways, like a nation that acted righteously, that didn't abandon their God. They ask me for righteous judgments, wanting to be close to God. Why do we fast and you don't see? Why afflict ourselves and you don't notice? Yet on your fast day, you do whatever you want and oppress all your workers. You quarrel and brawl, and then you fast. You hit each other violently with your fists. You shouldn't fast as you are doing today if you want to make your voice heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I choose? A day of self-affliction, of bending one's head like a reed, and of lying down in mourning clothes and ashes? Is this what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Isn't this the fast I choose? Releasing wicked restraints, untying the ropes of a yoke, setting free the mistreated, and breaking every yoke? Isn't it sharing your bread with the hungry and bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked when you see them, and not hiding from your own family?
Then your light will break out like the dawn, and you will be healed quickly. Your own righteousness will walk before you, and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and God will say, I'm here. If you remove the yoke from among you, the finger pointing, the wicked speech, if you open your heart to the hungry and provide abundantly for those who are afflicted, your light will shine in the darkness, and your gloom will be like the noon. The Lord will guide you continually and provide for you, even in parched places. He will rescue your bones. You will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water that won't run dry. They will rebuild ancient ruins on your account. The foundations of generations past you will restore. You will be called mender of broken walls, restorer of livable streets. If you stop trampling the Sabbath, stop doing whatever you want on my holy day, and consider the Sabbath a delight, sacred to the Lord, honored, and honor it instead of doing things your way, then you will take delight in the Lord. I will let you ride on the heights of the earth. I will sustain you with the heritage of your ancestor Jacob. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So Beth sort of mentioned this, but just to give you a sense of the vibe of this sermon, we're just going to basically have a conversation with each other in front of you. It won't be weird, probably. So, yeah. Okay, so let's start with our first thing. Our first thing is about fasting and
Yes.
diet culture.
Yes.
Because I can't hear this reading and not talk about that. That's very important to me. As somebody who is, forever recovering from an eating disorder.
And I grew up Catholic, so
Yeah.
I also have a lot of fasting
experience and vibes.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was one of the things that's really interesting that I looked up is of course, it's just kind of the vibe of how I've been doing scripture these days, and it's harder with the Old Testament because I didn't take Hebrew, but I did take Greek, as looking up some of the etymology of the various words that are used. And one of the things that's interesting is that the etymology for the word for fasting that's used Doesn't have anything to do with food. It just sort of comes from covering your mouth.
And then the other part you mentioned was that a mouth also isn't necessarily just
Yes.
like this,
Yeah, it's like basically an opening.
but it can be in the ground like a well or anything.
Yeah, and even in this passage, like compared to the idea that fasting is about abstinence from food, if that's true, then this is basically all treating fasting metaphorically, right? Or it's just basically sort of contrasting or just not using fasting in a way that has to do with abstaining from food. Whereas, like, really, especially in non-religious sort of context right now, fasting is about abstaining from food and, like, is explicitly a kind of diet right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Also.
And like if you look up like current English definitions for the word fasting, they're really going to be pointing towards abstaining from food. The broadest one that I could find was like something that was like, abstinence for religious
Purposes.
reasons, usually about food.
Yeah, not always.
Not always, but usually about food.
But yeah, in this context, it's just like a unintentional religious or spiritual practice, really.
Yeah, and I think that's a really different, part of the thing that I think of is like being part of really progressive church circles in general, there are ways in which hearing the word fasting doesn't instantly evoke only abstaining from food in the way that it was usually held in my childhood, because there's been so much like reclamation of like what, especially in terms of like fasting as a Lenten practice, like is supposed to look like what it is that you're abstaining from is usually now in the context that I'm like part of those conversations, it's not usually about food, and people like have a really like intentional idea of like, if you don't know what it is to feast, then you probably shouldn't fast.
Yeah.
Because both of those are supposed to be part of the religious practice, and if you're only doing the fasting part, then that is getting into this thing that's like pointed out in here about the fast they choose is self-affliction. Like that's what it is, and that's so much about like what fasting was in my childhood, which was like you were supposed to be giving up ice cream or sugar or soda or something like that. That was like, that is really supported in diet culture to be given up as like a virtuous thing to give up.
Right, because there's this like moral association.
Yeah.
Right, there's ascribing various like moral value to different kinds of foods.
Yeah.
Right, and so you're supposed to be giving up quote unquote bad foods, a term
Yes.
you will never hear me use.
Yeah. Unless it is a food that has become moldy. Or
Yes, that's right. Expired food is a different question. Yes. Yeah. And so that's sort of the like self-affliction side. But if you look at the sort of second piece of like the fast that God and Isaiah are choosing, it's actually about feeding people. That's how food is mentioned, primarily. It's not about abstaining from food. It's about sharing and people who need food being able to access it.
Well, and I think that there's so much in this about the way that particular kinds of Christian culture have really pushed ideas of suffering as virtuous in general. And so, like, fasting from foods that are delicious, or like restraining yourself from something that you enjoy and like experiencing the lack of that, or the suffering for not having that, not having your morning coffee and suddenly you can't function, suddenly that's supposed to be virtuous somehow.
That's right. Well, yeah, more virtuous, or it's self-flagellation,
Yes.
right? It's like punishing yourself for being bad.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this question of like what does suffering communicate, right? Is suffering a way that we're like making up for the fact that we're not good enough? If somebody is suffering, does it show that they're not good? But like, what if suffering isn't communication at all from God?
And part of the thing of into that second thing of like what about releasing the wicked restraints and tying the ropes of a yoke, like you get into like, what actually feels really good sharing
Food.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah,
having-
that too.
Yes.
Both.
But sharing things and like releasing people into freedom, like that feels great. And I think, you know, all of this linking into an idea of like what we're trusting our bodies to communicate to us and how we're using that information. Like if something feels good, why is that inherently so much less trustworthy as information about our like worthiness and goodness in the world than the like the restriction or the giving things up or
Yeah, one of the things that's really common in eating disorders is, content note for eating disorder content, is that you get like an endorphin rush when you feel hungry. And so the sort of signals about like what actually feels good gets inverted.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's like a really persistent and damaging piece of an eating disorder that can last a lot longer. Even when you're, working through your recovery. And it's a really common part of our culture, right? A lot of language about, junk food or like people just needing to make a sort of an excuse for indulging is also really common.
then we're gonna really have to run some extra miles tomorrow or something.
But it turns out that God actually wants you to eat food if you're hungry, is what we're learning
And it's
from
nice
this Bible
if that food is
passage.
delicious.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And not just eat food if you're hungry, right, but be sharing it with others, right? And the difference in focus is like, in this sort of self-affliction version, you're focused on yourself and sort of how bad you are and how much you need to be punished or what you need to do to be virtuous. Whereas in the sort of second piece, the like sharing piece, the freeing people, the, bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked, you're focused on the needs of others, and not, which is not to say that you don't also have needs, but you're focused on those as good and valid.
And then you're sharing because everybody needs things and is worthy of the things that they need, but not necessarily in a way that's like, I can't have the things that I need.
Yeah.
I need to give all of those things up and make sure that I'm suffering so that other people can be happy. And there's like so many ways that manifests, whether it's like literally about food, or whether we're talking about other like shapes of ways that it's so easy in our culture to slip into some kind of idea that being in this self-sacrificial role of like pushing yourself so hard and often like causing yourself like significant pain or exhaustion or burnout or any of those things like is fundamentally virtuous because you are like providing, even though the thing you're providing for is not actually your own well-being.
That's right, and it's the sort of narrative or story that you have about yourself is about, what you need to do to deserve something good, or like what you need to earn, or like how to sort of actively be a good person. But the thing is, like, you are already good, and so like it's shifting this story about yourself to be about your own belovedness and goodness and agency. Like what, power do you have to share, to free other people, to, take the homeless poor into your house?
Yeah, and in the part about like untying the ropes of a yoke, there's like so many yokes that I can point to about the particular ways that like capitalism restrains us and makes us like do all this like labor for something that very few of us actually believe in, but we like still end up like committed to these yokes of ours, and the ways in which it can be really difficult to free ourselves from that. And sometimes it's easier to free somebody else, help somebody else get free, than it is to help ourselves get free. But that's, the work then of community, to be trying to like all help each other be untying those ropes. And this is maybe where I said the thing about made the reference to the hell spoon story.
Yes. Tell us about hell spoons, Emily.
I think
we aren't very big believers in hell, it should be said, which is why we're laughing about this.
Yeah, but it just reminded me of I don't even know, what is it supposed to be, a fable or a story of some kind of like, somebody showing up at hell and realizing and seeing like what was happening is that everybody's sitting at this like lavish dinner table, but the only utensils they have to eat the soup in front of them are these like really long spoons, and they can't like get the spoon into the thing and eat themselves. And it's like, oh, this is hell, having all of this like, vast feast before you, and you can't actually eat it. But then the vision of heaven is the exact same table, the exact same food, and the exact same spoons, except everyone's just feeding each other, because that is the way that you can use the long spoons and still everyone actually gets fed. You're just not focused on only providing your own thing there.
Yeah. You're not only meeting your own needs. So we've gotten pretty far into this sermon and we haven't mentioned rescuing bones at all. So maybe we should try to do that.
Yeah. We both really like the line in this of "He will rescue your bones."
Yeah. Basically, neither of us really comes from a tradition where naming sermons is a thing, and so we were just like, what are the lines we should choose? And the one that I liked and suggested first, which is, you hit each other violently with your fists, maybe wasn't as closely connected to
Any of the things
the
you want to discuss?
overall point, though it is awesome. And so we were like, let's say rescuing your bones.
Yeah. So what does this evoke for you, Caitlin?
I think first of all, bones are very cool and hardcore. I think it must be said.
And I feel like we need to give a shout out to Bailey and Julia.
Yes.
And their engagement in the Bone Chapel.
It is very cool that they got engaged
Very
in a Bone
romantic.
Chapel. And bones are solid in various ways, right? They're like your internal structure, but even still, they're like alive, right? They sort of have this. I think there's this sense of like, oftentimes because they're on the inside, when you see a bone, the thing is dead, and if not, it's probably in some great amount of pain, the creature. But like, our bones are fully alive, and they're like, the source of sort of blood that ends up, being such an important symbol for life in Scripture.
The other thing it evokes for me is partly because of our death class, but also because Caitlin and I talk a lot and engage in a lot of content about death in general.
Because we're cool.
Because we're very cool. We're watching a whole series of videos from somebody who's a mortician and now does YouTube content and stuff, like talking about a lot of death practices and funeral practices and like various kinds of internment and all of these kinds of things, and talking about the ways in which like especially modern Western funeral industry stuff ends up like pushing a person farther and farther away from like what the natural decay of the body is intended to do, and is like becomes so much more about preserving the body in particular ways, and I feel like through all of that and a lot of our exploration in the death class in the spring, it feels like it's pushing us as humans farther away from the like reality of our own mortality and the reality of our connection to the like larger cycles of nature. And I feel like there's
the like interconnectedness.
Yeah, the
as
interconnectedness of all of that. And so rescuing your bones, to me, especially when it's like paired with these lines about like being like a watered garden and all these like this like nature imagery, just like really makes me feel like what is being rescued from, or like what my bones are being rescued from, is this like separation that has been artificially placed, that is like trying to like have an idea of like a possible immortality or way of letting go of the idea of invulnerability or the possibility of invulnerability.
Yeah.
That like my bones are being rescued by letting them decay.
Yeah, and by your sort of your flesh decaying and participating in these like natural cycles, right? There's a way in which it's not really a contrast in this reading, but it's sort of like rescuing your bones, which is so embodied, right? It's like pointing at these like fundamental pieces of your body compared to like saving your soul, which is so disembodied, right? And has this vibe of like, well, you die and you leave this world. You don't have to deal with this world anymore. But like, to me, rescuing your bones is so much more like, no, you're like much more a part of this world, and like that is the thing that like we are actually destined for. It's not this like separation from each other and from God and from the land. It's this actual like return. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the like thing that this all sort of then adds up for me of like what this is painting a picture of like what it can look like is, you know, all of these pieces put together is a shift from this idea of like I must exhaust myself, I must sacrifice, I must like functionally remove myself from the like community system because all I'm good for is sacrificing myself to it, to an idea of participating in it and like sharing as part of it, and like knowing that you are enough and that you have enough and can all along with your other community members like participate to make sure that everybody is well.
Yeah, that's right. That our salvation, our survival, our well-being comes from the sort of interconnectedness that manifests in community.
Yeah, and participating in the abundance that is inherent in community.
Yeah, whether it's like feeding others or being fed yourself.
Yeah, both of those roles are very important, and I think part of the self-sacrifice thing ends up being a thing about feeling like you can't accept things from other people. Like
That's right.
You can only give, or that you're so worried that you haven't given enough. That you can't accept anything yet. I have to give some more to the system.
Yeah, or you have to you have to say all of the ways that you're not taking up space
before you can take up any space.
Yeah, that's
or that
right.
you know you shouldn't take up space,
Yes.
or like, you know, I know I should have been able to figure this out on my own, but maybe because I figured it out on my own all these other times, I could ask for a little bit of help this time. You know?
That's right.
Like,
yeah, but it's also the case that like when you're like more preoccupied with like how you know bad you are and insufficient you are, you're so much less likely to be able to be considerate and aware of what's going on around you, right? To be able to like notice other people and their needs.
Their actual needs, not
Yeah.
the ones that you like fear that they have, or you like assume that they might have because it's the thing that's going to cost you the most. So that's
Yeah.
probably what they need and probably what you should give them.
Right, and right. You're like, it's the difference between like actually listening to and paying attention to people in terms of what they need, instead of being like, I already know what you need and it's Jesus. Just for example. And that is the thing, and if you want something else, that thing is bad, and I need to communicate that to you. But then,
The other thing I was going to say was just about, like, I think this is probably very Lutheran of me, but
is it about baptism?
no, it's not about baptism
Oh.
actually. But it's about
Is it?
freely given grace
Oh,
and not
okay,
earned
yeah.
grace.
That is pretty Lutheran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that we don't need to earn the grace or earn the things that we need, the participation in the community.
Or rest.
Or rest. You don't need to earn rest. These are freely given gifts that are available, and figuring out how to access them and shift the like sort of frame of reference that you're using about what it means to be a worthy person in order to access them is like, I think, part of what I hear in all of this.
Yeah. And, you know, we should probably throw out that, like, you know, like, it's one thing to be able to, like, see and understand the sort of theory behind this, and another thing within a world that's still gripped by this sort of self-affliction, you know, mentality to actually live it. You know, you're sort of constantly at odds with expectations, and expectations that like you were really deeply raised in, right?
I really notice that every time I like, this feels very related to me, but it's not necessarily explicitly something I've said in this thing so far, but when I see women on the internet being like, I am hot and I am excellent, you know, and and like how much like even I react like, oh my gosh.
Are you allowed?
Are you allowed to say
say
that?
that?
Like, when like it's supposed to be that like you're not supposed to know that you're beautiful. Like that's supposed to be the attractive thing, is that the man is supposed to like tell you for the first time that you have never known before that he uniquely sees you as beautiful or whatever.
Exactly.
And like for you to just like go out there and just be like, no, I'm awesome.
That's
just,
right.
I'm just like, no.
That's the right way.
That is right.
That's right.
You're allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and it can be, it can be so, you have these sort of like different voices in your head at the same time that you're trying to like balance and listen to. And I think, you sort of see that in this, in many ways in this story of a people that's like returning, right? And the way in which the exile was like, is sort of, the story of the exile is told as a story of the community being punished through their suffering, right? And so they're like, well, what do we hang on to when we go back so that this doesn't happen again? Well, it's our suffering, and it's like, well,
then you end up being like, why are we suffering? And you're not even noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's because that's not actually the thing God wanted. That God wasn't for suffering. Yeah.
We want to be the menders of the broken walls, the
Yeah.
restorers of the livable streets, and stop trampling on the Sabbath.
That's right. Stop doing whatever you want on my holy day. Also, these are great lines. It's so good in this translation. Consider the Sabbath a delight and sacred to the Lord, honored and honor it, instead of doing things your way. This is not always good news. It doesn't always feel like it. But yeah, that this rest isn't something that you get to just be like, yeah, I don't really wanna. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well then you're gonna collapse probably and die.
And that's not going to be helping anybody.
No, yeah. So we're gonna move into our reflection song. And do we want to say anything about this? It's pretty self-explanatory.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but you need our drummer.
Denise, please come back.